Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. My wife and I were married for 18 years. Some of the magic in the bedroom was fading, I'll admit that. But we were also parents to two children, 12 and 16 years old. In an attempt to rekindle our relationship, I got us a new bed frame and mattress fit for royalty, along with lingerie for her. She loved it, and it actually did help us relax and have a good time. We worked a lot, so I made arrangements for my 22-year-old nephew to babysit for us. When my wife met him again for the first time in 5 years, he'd grown into a young man, and I saw her face. It made me mad. I actually brought it up with her. How her eyes sparkled when she saw him. And I reminded her he's only a few years older than our oldest. She thought I was being ridiculous and denied anything I saw. I'd known her long enough to know when she was excited or liked what she saw. She couldn't hide it. Fast forward another month, and there wasn't much of a change. Nothing that bad, but nothing that great either. Even though I was trying, we each had something to do after work, separately. So I asked my nephew to go to our house to watch the kids again. My wife told me she'd be home at the same time as me. When I got home, her car was already there, and so was my nephew's. The house looked dark. I didn't find anyone downstairs, so I went upstairs, pretty nervous about what I was going to find. Our bedroom door was open, and the lights were on while my wife turned off the television. My nephew looked extremely nervous that I was home. Seeing him in my bedroom, I asked what was going on, and my wife said nothing. They were just watching telly. The kids went to bed. My nephew was silent, looking around the room nervously before he said he had to go. I paid him hesitantly. He had trouble looking me in the eye. After he left, I noticed my wife's undergarments on the floor, nearly under the bed. I asked her if anything bad happened while I was, and she was caught off guard by the question, but she just asked what I meant and said no. I was just super uncomfortable laying in bed all night. The next day, I managed to pull myself together with an hour of sleep and sit in my car ready to leave for work before I pulled out my phone. Ditched. It was a long message from my nephew. He apologized for having intimate with my wife last night. He said he couldn't sleep at all. He felt so bad for what he'd done, and he couldn't forgive himself until I forgave him. The poor kid didn't realize he stole my whole life away from me. Everything I worked for and built with my wife and the mother of my children was gone. I only replied to thank him for telling me, but I was devastated. I couldn't drive. I couldn't move. My wife came out to go to work, and I wouldn't move my car out from behind hers. She expected me to, so she sat in her car waiting. She was on her phone and got a message from my nephew telling her. He told me what they did. I walked up to her window and could hear her on the phone calling him a little turd for telling me. When she explicitly told him not to tell me anything, she was freaking out. And when she noticed me standing next to her window, she jumped out of her skin, then started crying. I broke down too, because it was hard to look at her. I told her everything we had was done over. I started walking back in the house, and she followed me, panicking and crying. She asked me to forgive her for this one mess up. In all the years we were married, she was loyal to me and the mother of my children. She didn't want me to break up our family just because of this one moment of weakness. I told her it wasn't just one moment of weakness. It was a moment she decided she would have intimate with my nephew behind my back. It was a choice she made to betray me, her husband of 18 years. I told her I never wanted to see her again. She gave up on us. Our marriage got boring, so she gave up and cheated on me. I was sobbing, which made her sob. I wasn't worried about my ability to move on from this. I was crying for our kids. Their lives were going to change, and it was because of their mom. I was willing to stay with her through thick and thin, no matter what. I would sacrifice and communicate whatever it took, but it takes two. I told her to get out of the house. She hadn't brought enough change into our kids' lives. The least she could do was leave the house so they didn't have to move with me. After arguing, she actually agreed, but warned me she was going to get custody of them. I didn't argue. I knew I could prove her infidelity and irresponsibility. In addition to that, the court ruled everything should remain as normal for the children as possible. So they continued living with me and going to the same school. My wife had to live with her closest relative for a while, an aunt that didn't know her very well and lived 45 minutes away. The kids were extremely upset. It isn't easy on anyone when a family is broken apart, and each time they spoke on the phone with their mom or saw her in person, it was awkward, and they wanted to know why she broke up with their dad. They told me she would cry when they asked, because there wasn't a good answer, and I knew she felt like a stupid, foolish woman. She eventually gave up carpooling to work in the area, but I think it's because even the people she worked with knew what she did. I became somewhat of a bachelor for the middle-aged women in town, and I couldn't complain. Someone else started watching my kids, but I never told the kids why. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife, 36, and I, 37, were married for 10 years, and it was already time for a kitchen renovation. We each earned a decent amount of money, so for her birthday, I thought she'd really appreciate it if I arranged a contractor to come by and start working on it. After that, I did the planning and picked out what I thought my wife would love most. She was so surprised and happy while they were busy renovating. For the next few weeks, my wife was home alone while I was away on a work trip. She didn't know that I left the cameras on in the house because I wanted to supervise the people I was paying. I didn't think anything about the cameras, so I didn't tell her about them. One day, 20 minutes after she should have gone to the house, I asked her how she liked it. I got no response after 10 minutes, which just wasn't like her. I thought of the security cameras, but I didn't think I needed to check on her or anything. I just wanted to make sure she got there safely. I was then surprised to see her making out with the guy remodeling our kitchen. I watched in disbelief from my phone's live camera feed. She took him by the hand and went into the living room. I could just barely see something happening. I freaked out, obviously. I started calling her repeatedly as I drove home. It was a 2-hour drive back, and those were by far the most painful 2 hours I've endured in my life. I didn't tell her what I saw, only that we had to talk immediately. I hated her for what she just did so boldly, as if she didn't have a husband of 10 years that loved her and was helping to pay the man she slept with in the house we lived in together. When I barged into the house, I could see the fear on her face. I told her that I saw what she did on the security cameras. She came out apologizing to me with all her heart. It was crazy to look at her face knowing what she did today. For some reason she chose that guy to betray me with. During her rambling, she said he looked at her a certain way when she came downstairs in her robe, and when she stopped by to check on them, he came onto her. I knew it didn't matter, but in the moment I wanted to prove her wrong and see how this started. I pulled up the recording earlier in the day, and my wife hid her face as I did so. It showed her speaking with AP super close. She bent over right in front of him and moved her shirt over clear signs she wanted him to make a move. It made me sick. I couldn't believe she didn't think I had the cameras on. I felt like I was watching someone else completely. I hated her. I immediately fired the crew that were working on the house. I told the boss why and even showed him the recording. He fired AP on the spot. I don't know how I didn't beat the crap out of him. It was great to see him fired, though. I moved back into the house without a kitchen and got started on divorce and telling our families. I had the video evidence, but I didn't have to show it to anyone in the family for them to believe me. After we separated, she called me every day to apologize for cheating, ask how I was doing, and if I needed anything. I'd usually tell her to stop calling me and that all I needed was a smarter woman. This happened about 3 years ago, and since then I've been single. I've had a few one-night stands, but nothing serious. I'm not sure when I'll be ready to commit again.